Hello and welcome to Cinebaz Live. I have a very special guest and we are so excited to talk about what is a soul mechanic, because the first question I get when I speak about this lovely guest I got sitting here with me is, what is a soul mechanic? So welcome, Kay. How are you?
Thank you, Charlotte. I'm very well, thank you. And in answer to your question, I am a soul mechanic. I'm not sure if there's any other soul mechanics because it's just a name that I made up.
I love it. I absolutely love the name, because why shouldn't we have a mechanic for the soul? We have mechanics for cars, where other engineering sort of things, and the bodies and engineering,
Yeah.
and we need it. So people say, what do you do, and what, because you do so much. So in terms of what you do, tell me a little bit
in a very short nut case. I read tarot and soul cards because people don't think for themselves this day and age. We are drip fed, whether we like it or not, through adverts, through reading, through all sorts of things. We get drip fed. So I like to push people out of their comfort zone and to think for themselves with the tarot cards. I also use then a therapy called kinetic shift, which helps them to achieve goals when they feel that they can't. There's a block stopping them. And then I've got a help that I help them with those things that I've just spoken about, thinking for themselves, accepting themselves, and moving forwards. But the soul mechanic came about because, believe it or not, Charlotte, I was depressed for 50 years. 50 years.
Did you know that you were depressed?
I
did. You
know.
just you did know? Yeah.
I didn't know, obviously, straight away, because it started when I was 3 years old.
Wow.
I lived in Bath at the time. Really nice city, beautiful gardens to walk around, which my mum and I used to do while my dad was away in the RAF doing his national service. And he signed up for an extra year, so it was 3 years before he came home. So I was 3, and my mum was my best friend. But she was his wife, and he was jealous.
Gosh.
So I wasn't allowed to walk in between them. I had to walk on the opposite side to my mum, to what I was used to, because that was the side he walked on. He would set me goals to do different things, and I couldn't achieve them, because by the time I got near enough to achieving it, he'd move the goalpost, and so
this is where the whole soul mechanic comes in, isn't it? Because you were programmed into being something that you didn't really understand. Is that right?
That is perfectly right. It sounds awful, because on the surface, my dad's a very nice man, and I find it very difficult to say what he was like to live with. He was a very difficult man to live with. He would never chastise me. That was always left to my mum. But he was good in other ways. He would help me with my reading. He taught me to tie my laces, everything that you'd expect a dad to do. But then he would criticize me when he was helping me with my reading. He would, I would say Prinky for Prince, and he would make fun of it and things like that. I mean, he taught me to drive. He was there the night that my daughter was born, because everybody had arranged to come and look after my son had gone out. And he came over and looked after me. He picked my son up and took him home with him. So he's always been there for me, but there was always this underlying bullying.
Do you think he realised?
I don't think he did.
No, I think a lot of people don't.
I don't think he did, because I did actually confront him with the fact that he was bullying me, and he said, "Oh no, I've never bullied you. I've never done anything that you're saying." So I said, "Then tell me this then, Dad. Why have you never told me you loved me?" And he couldn't answer me.
No.
I don't think he knows how to tell anybody that he loves them, apart from my mum. And over the last 20 years, we've gotten a better relationship, because he knows now that I know what he is. He knows that I know he's a bully, even if he doesn't want to accept it. And he knows now he can't do it, because I won't take it. I'll stand up to him, or I'll walk away and not go back for a while.
So going back to what you do, this is what you help people with.
This is what I help people with. And I know that there are other people suffering in that way, because I wasn't on my, I can't have been the only one.
No.
But it's hard to admit it.
I think it's the hardest thing that you mentioned in the beginning is to think for yourself. Because if you've had a responsibility, especially in a family relationship, so I was always the mum in the family, even though I have a mum and dad, it was left to me because my brother was poorly. So from a young age to take on a role, and I know that so many people that watch this would have similar stories. And I think when you grow up and you realize why you are what you are, lots of these things will come forward. But sometimes it feels really horrible, like you said, to say something so negative about the people that you love.
Yeah.
But it's just, you understand it, don't you? But it's very hard to
I don't think we always necessarily understand it either. I think it takes a long time of undoing the mechanics, if you like, untangling the web of wires that have been crossed, because you think that you're the only person in the whole wide world that this is happening to, and we're not.
No. And it's when you start sharing that, and I find it a lot with business owners, because often there's other things involved, like neurodiversity. There can be all sorts of different things that have made us become what we are and why we are what we are. And talking about it, actually, you realize that everyone's got a story, but a lot of the time they're very interlinked and similar stories, isn't it?
I mean, I'm a great believer in kindness this day and age. Wouldn't have thought that if you'd known me 20 years ago, because I had a great big chip up here and I wasn't very nice. But I think kindness and respect, my father never respected me because I wasn't allowed to have a mind of my own. And yes, he was kind to me in a way, but because he didn't respect me, that kindness meant nothing. I think the two's got to go together. And, I started off the soul mechanic to help private individuals, not businesses. But as I've expanded, I've realized that business owners can be helped by this as well.
So do you tend to have a mixture of people now?
Somebody asked me the other day, how can you help business owners? Well, it's simple. Business owner is a person. Forget the business. That will look after itself if you were in the right frame of mind.
Yeah.
If you're not in the right frame of mind, if you've got something at the back of your mind all the time, then it will take your mind off your business. I mean, one of my members in my hub, when we had a one-to-one for the first time, I said to him, "So what's bothering you then? What's stopping you from focusing on your business?" And he said, "You're going to laugh, but I got a frying pan that needs to be taken back to the camp shop, and I haven't done it." And I said, "But why haven't you done it?" He said, "Because I haven't made the time." And I said, "Okay, the next one-to-one we have, I will ask you, have you taken that frying pan back?" A couple of days later, I got an inbox from him saying, "You don't need to ask me, I've done it."
It can be the simplest thing,
that simple.
Can't it?
That's simple.
So what would you say to people that are out there and feeling depressed, knowing that they're depressed, but maybe not, there's so many different levels of depression. What would you say the first step? Because you do feel extremely lonely when you're in that space.
I think the first thing you've got to realise, you're not on your own. The second thing is, don't be frightened to ask for help. And that doesn't necessarily mean going to the doctors. All right, that was my first port of call when I first felt that things weren't right, when I was crying my eyes out every time I went to school. But my doctor was very kind that I met that time and told me that he could give me Valium or I could go to work. I chose the latter. I've never taken any antidepressant tablets, because if you read antidepressant tablets, most of them say they cause depression. Yeah. So that was the first time I realised I was depressed, and then I was depressed for quite some time after that. But when my daughter was born 10 years later, it came really to the surface again, and I went to a counsellor at that time. Via my doctor, it was a different doctor, and he sent me to a counsellor who was fantastic. Again, no drugs were involved. Now, not everybody wants to talk to a counsellor. Not everybody wants to admit to an authoritative person that they think they've got depression or they're not feeling right. You can come and chat to somebody like myself.
Yeah.
Because, I've been there. I'm not going to say I'm there necessarily on the level that they are, but I do understand. My neighbour, when I had depression, she didn't have depression until she'd had her second child. And when she met me after, she'd moved away and come back. And when she came back, she said to me, I understand now what you went through or were going through or are going through. Because she'd been on a level of it herself.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I want to sort of finish off the show with is that you don't need to have, you don't want sympathy.
No.
You want empathy. You want people to just understand. But sometimes that is necessarily not in your circle of friends and family.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to point out, actually, that you might just need to find somebody else. And I also think it's really important, which is the whole point of the shows that we do, because I think you need to find the right person for you.
You definitely do.
Yeah. And you have a living example of that. So until next show, when we're going to talk about that at some point in the future, stay tuned. But I want to say a massive, massive thank you for coming and sharing with us, because you're not alone out there. If you're feeling this, you're certainly not alone. So can people just book a consultation? If people want to get hold of you, how is best to go about?
It's best to go onto my website. On my website, there's several different services, so you may have to scroll down a little bit, but there's a service called Virtual Coffee. If they book a virtual coffee, they have an half an hour chat with me where we can decide whether I'm the right fit, or sometimes that's all they need is that cup of coffee, that listening ear.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm happy to talk to anybody.
And I think that's really important if you are feeling that you are in this situation. Any good therapist, counselor, mentor, coach, whatever you turn to, will always, always have a free consultation. So if you're looking in and watching this and you want to get hold of Kay and it resonates with you, then get in touch and we would love to hear your comments. Thank you so much for being here today.
Welcome.
Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.